Good morning. This is Hammersmith Chess Club, Junior Hour Basics in 5 minutes or so. This video is the summary of a session we had in June 2020 on the bishops. When watching the video, you can stop at any time when you want to understand a position or try to find a solution for a problem yourself. Now, bishops are among the first pieces to be developed in the opening. The choice of which diagonal and which square on that diagonal the bishops move sometimes already defines middle game themes. Now the first theme is pins. Pins of the opponent's knights are very common by the bishop. Like here already the knight is pinned because bishop targets the king. And now this is not the best continuation, but still it shows an example when black is not careful, white can exploit the pin by pushing a pawn, and even though black can push back the attacking bishop for unpinning the pin, it's too late and white will win a piece, a whole piece. Even other continuations, if here the pawn, which could pin, which could threaten the knight, is exchanged, then the pin is supported by the knight. And if black is not careful again, like here's this, already now it's losing a full, well, exchange. Or in other continuations, if white doesn't take on c6, but for example moves the queen to d7, and now of course if the knight moves somewhere, then there is a risk that a takes b5, the bishop b5, but here it's too late because white specifically already has the queen in the e-file, and it's even worse. Another pin, now the queen cannot be taken because the pawn is pinned, and it's pinned also against taking the bishop. If the bishop is taken, well, the rook will be lost, and of course white will win. A second theme comes up in openings when fianchettoing the bishop. Now this is not a typical fianchetto where the bishop is brought to the long diagonal by the opening moves b3 or g3 to this diagonal, but here it is through a sacrifice or through a gambit opening. For quick development, white sacrificed 2 pawns and has not only the quicker development but also the ongoing attack. And soon, when all the pieces of white come to the attack, then white will quickly win. Look at the 2 beautiful bishops, the one on c4 on that diagonal, the other fianchettoed on the long diagonal, looking at the opponent's king, and that is the one which will finally also deliver checkmate. Here comes close because so far the diagonal is blocked by the own pawn, but now with the queen sacrifice the pawn can be pushed and it will be mate in next move. The third topic for a theme of openings are from bishops on c4, where there are sacrifices on f7, very common, because they directly attack with check the opponent's king, especially when they can be followed up with a check on g5 by the knight. And this at least wins a pawn, the pawn on f7, because it caught the bishop on b4, which got the equal balance back of the bishops. But here the attack continues, and if black is not quite careful, then indeed it will be black will be mated, like in this case. This sacrifice on f7 is very common in Italian opening. With bishops on the long diagonal from b1 to h7, the sacrifice on h7 is very common. In order to be successful, it usually requires a follow-up check by a queen on h5, and the queen needs to be supported by a rook or by a knight in order to checkmate. This example shows such a follow-up in a game of Judith Polgar against former world champion Anatoly Karpov. Queen h5 check, and already black resigned because it's hopeless. White would sacrifice the bishop on g7. Mate will come on h7, the king can take, but then of course white will mate immediately after that. The e file is also taken by the second rook. This is another example with a follow-up. Also threatening g7 or the rook going to the h file. So even though the bishop can be pushed back or try to be pushed back by black, it doesn't help. Now the whole king side is crushed by another bishop sacrifice, and after rook d3, mate or loss of the queen for black is unavoidable. Next move will be rook h3, and only the queen can move in between and will be lost. Here is an example with a follow-up after queen h5 with a knight on g5. Very typical. The only way to allow the king to escape is to move away with the rook. First, white will take on f7, which of course that's not defended anymore, and then there will be mate on g7. Very common theme as well. And finally, a position where an immediate sacrifice on h7 would not work because g5 is not protected. Before that it was protected by a queen on h5. Of course it could work if the knight would be on h3 and not on f3, but now it is on f3. So here the knight moved to g5, the protection has to be prepared. The knight can go there. Now the sacrifice can come because the h file is opened through the sacrifice on g5. And indeed here it's another theme where the rook can be sacrificed. If the rook is taken, there will be queen h5, check, and g6, and then mate is unavoidable on h7, h8, and then g7. But it is anyway unavoidable. Mate. In the endgame, we often speak of good and bad bishops, the same that we spoke of good and bad knights, but also here we speak of right and wrong bishops. Now the first example shows a bad bishop. A bad bishop is one which is blocked by its own pawns, immovable pawns. And in order to stop the remaining pawns here on the king side to be of a different color, black blocks the king side with g5. Now all the white pawns are on the same color, the bright color squares as the bishop itself. And look at, I don't have to comment very much on the maneuvering of black. White is completely unable to do anything about the bishop, about the knight, and white can't enter in the black's position. White can't prevent black from entering over the dark squares his own position, and then it's a matter of detailed calculation and follow through that indeed one of the block pawns will be lost and the game will be over for white. Now we come to the other category of right and wrong bishops. A right bishop is one in endgames with a pawn, with a rook's pawn, where the bishop covers the corner square. of the rook pawn, because if that is the case, then the opponent's king can be prevented from going into that corner square and will be pushed out, like in this case. Now, the wrong bishop is one which does not cover the corner square, like in this case. Here, the opponent's king can not be prevented from always moving back to the corner square, or at one time, if white pushes the pawn or moves the bishop at the wrong time, then indeed stalemate is the conclusion. And this happened in a real game, Alekhine versus Lasker, two former world champions. Now here black is 2 pawns up, but the game was soon drawn when both players realized that black's pawn, black's bishop, the attacking bishop, is of the wrong color. It's a wrong bishop because it does not cover the corner square. So white's bishop can be sacrificed, again, the advancing d pawn, central pawn, and white's king will always stay in the corner, cannot be pushed out, and it will be drawn, even if it takes 50 moves or longer. Now, frustration for one and joy for the other. These are the end games with opposite color bishops.